You spent 27 years at the FBI and moving to fight against piracy at MPA. How did that background shape the way you see piracy, not just as a commercial issue, but as a form of organized cross-border crime?
So it's interesting. So when I started with the FBI back in 1997, I know it was a long time ago. Now I'm dating myself. I was on a computer hacking and intellectual property squad. So I had worked IPR violations, intellectual property violations, at the very, very beginning of my career. And I had actually worked with the MPAA back when they were MPAA, the RIAA, Microsoft, and a bunch of other rights holders. So I had started out with my career working in intellectual property violations as well as theft of trade secrets. But in the FBI, one of the things that I learned is how to investigate complex networks. And as you know, piracy today, it's not just one operator. There's a whole infrastructure below it. It's folks that manage the payment pieces, folks that provide the infrastructure, folks that provide the coding for the apps, folks that build and sell the set-top boxes. And in order to really have an impact on piracy, you have to look at all of those different pieces, right? And as you know, piracy is also cross-border, right? So we might have an operator in the U.S., we might have infrastructure, in Southeast Asia, we might have a redirect service in another country. So all of those pieces kind of fit together. So, coming from the FBI, I learned how to kind of look at all of those pieces, and this was just kind of a logical extension of what I used to do.
Okay. And what's the biggest shift in mindset when moving from law enforcement to an industry-led coalition like ICE?
Yeah, so the difference between law enforcement and private industry is the way they get information and how they action it.
Okay.
So on the law enforcement side, right? So we would have to have a predicated investigation. We would do lawful collection, whether it was serving legal process or doing surveillance. All of those different pieces. We would work with the U.S. Attorney's Office and bring a case against a perpetrator. On the private sector side, right? You're a victim company, or you're representing multiple rights holders like the Motion Picture Association does. But those rights holders also sit on intelligence, right? When somebody infiltrates their system to steal a pre-release piece, they have the data that's associated with that. They have other sorts of key pieces of intelligence. They have regional atmospherics as to kind of what's going on. They have the ability to talk about scope and scale and impact. So for me, coming from both sides, now I see both sides, my value is how I can quickly translate both. So I know what law enforcement needs, and then I also know what the private industry can give. And I can translate that very quickly and kind of shorten that. Because sometimes, if you don't have that experience, you might think, why is law enforcement asking for this? Or, why can't industry provide that? And I can now translate both of those and bring to both parties to kind of have the question as well as the answer at the same time.
And we are talking about piracy in Indonesia and Southeast Asia. Indonesia is often cited as one of the largest piracy markets in Southeast Asia, particularly for film and live sports streaming. How does Asia view Indonesia within the broader APEC piracy landscape?
So Indonesia is an incredibly important market, right, in terms of consuming media, legitimate media. But also, like other regions, there is a good amount of piracy consumption as well. But some of that is driven by the ease of accessing pirated websites. But this is kind of where a really good partnership between MPA and ACE, as well as the Indonesian government comes into play, because enforcement is based upon rule of law. So, Indonesia has, good laws, they have good process on board, and we are a partner in terms of being able to provide that information.
Okay. And what makes Indonesia piracy ecosystem distinct compared to other markets in the region?
So obviously, a lot of the consumption of piracy is probably by the youth, right? Because they're on their phones all the time, and that rapidness of wanting to get content. So it makes it ripe for criminals to take advantage of that. So the youths are just going out and they're getting content, legitimate or illegitimate, because that's what they normally do, right? They want to be on their phone, they want to access the most current games, they want to access the most current movies, and that's great for the Indonesian market, right? In terms of creating content and marketing it to the youth, but it also provides an opportunity though for pirates to exploit it, because they want it quickly, right? And pirates prey on folks that don't understand the risks associated with it.
So has S worked directly with Indonesian authorities like Kominfo, the police, or the agencies to take down the action or anything? Collaboration?
So 100%. I mean, the key to any sort of success, right, in defeating piracy is through partnerships, through working with local government, through working with law enforcement, right? Whether it's strengthening existing laws, helping interpret those laws, helping law enforcement conduct additional forensic analysis. ACE works very closely within the region, specifically within Indonesia, to leverage all of the tools, whether it's site blocking or other methodologies.
Okay. You're going to speak sport piracy panel at EPOS this week. Yeah. Why has live sports piracy become such an urgent focus, especially compared to film and series policy?
So the biggest reason is, right, live sports piracy, the harm happens real time. So the value of a game happens immediately when it's played, right? Not over time. Because you already know the score, right? Once it happens. And, and if you're a true fan, you might want to go back and watch the game because something interesting happens. But most, consumption of sports happens immediate. And that's why enforcement in live piracy is such a challenging place. Because as you know, the process to identify criminals, right, bring proper process against them and ultimately arrest them takes time. So in live sports, that time crunch it's felt even more, which requires us collectively to employ different types of tools to make it more difficult for the pirates to operate at scale.
How about the World Cup right now? Is it challenging to manage the?
I mean, as you know, the World Cup is.
It is the biggest, right?
It's the biggest thing that's going on right now, and markets, all markets are focused on providing that content to its viewership. But also, right, as I had mentioned before, that's a great opportunity for pirates to gain additional money through the monetization of their illegal websites. So it is a challenge, but the only way to really put a dent in it is to, work with the rights holders, work within the regions to put friction into that business model. So pirates monetize the websites. So we work with payment processors to make it more difficult for pirates to get the money. We work with legitimate ad providers to make sure that the websites don't have that appearance of legitimacy, right? Because pirate websites look very slick. And an unsuspecting consumer might not know that this is an illegitimate website because it has, legitimate brands on it. So we work with we work with ad companies to make sure that those legitimate brands don't appear on those pirate websites.
In Indonesia, illegal stream of major football league circulate widely and openly on social media. Is this the kind of pattern ACE is actively tracking, and what makes live sport content particularly hard to protect?
It's just, I think, by sheer numbers, right? So pirates are very agile, right? Their business model is to make as much money as possible and to keep the streams up as much as possible. So we work really closely with the social media companies, right, to take down those illegitimate links. But as soon as one link pops up, another link pops up. So it's providing that information to the social media companies that enables them to identify those links or patterns in the links. So when they see a link, they know this is a pirate link, this is not a legitimate link, and they can quickly take it down.
From from Ace experience, what actually moves the needle on reducing piracy? Is it takedowns, platform disruption, public education, or pricing of legal alternatives?
I would say all of the above.
Oh, okay.
But you have to think of it as kind of a mosaic, right?
Yeah.
Like not one thing stops piracy,
Oh,
right? So not just the takedown of the links,
yeah.
not just the blocking of the websites, not just the identification of the pirates, not just interruption of their monetization
Okay.
piece. You have to do all of those
All
in
of those.
sequence, which is why it's so important, though, right, for industry to work very closely with various government entities across the globe, because as I mentioned before, it's not all in one place.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating how you have to sequence the operations, right? Work with the different entities to kind of have that greater outcome, that mosaic.
Have you ever feel tired facing all of those?
No, this is the fun part,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And maybe it has to do with my background a little
Okay,
bit. Like
yeah.
I love one of the things that drew me to the FBI was upholding the rule of law,
Okay.
protecting the American public, protecting. And this job is an extension of that,
Yeah.
right? So I uphold the rule of law, but I also protect the average consumer as well as industry from the harms created by criminals. So it's very similar.
Do local legal platforms from Indonesia like Click Film, Video, or Disney Plus, Hotstar see a measurable benefit from as enforcement work, or is the impact felt more at a global level?
So it's both. It's both. It's both local and global,
Okay.
right? So we had talked about how piracy is global the way it operates, right? But the harm is often very local, and that we see that translate into the impact on legitimate users moving away from legitimate sites, right? So it affects local broadcasters, it affects local platforms, regional rights holders, sports partners. So when we come in and we work with local law enforcement to disrupt a major piracy service and reduce access to the illegal streams, it's not just abstract, right? Sometimes we see legitimate users go to legitimate sites because of the friction that's created, right? The illegal website, if you're frustrated, you want the content, you're going to go someplace legitimate. So we do see, we see a shift.
Oh, so you study like human behavior of how to make piracy like that.
I mean, a lot of it goes to consumer education,
Okay.
because consumers are oftentimes unsuspecting, right? Like I had mentioned, sometimes they go to these sites, they look legitimate because they've got brands on them, but they don't know any better. Part of it is also making them realize, you're more likely to be exposed to malware or, identity theft or, fraudulent transactions because you're putting your personal information, into a illegitimate website. I mean, think about it. If pirates are already stealing, why would they not steal your stuff?
Yeah. That
Right?
makes sense. That really makes sense. Next question. What do you see the biggest gap between anti piracy policy frameworks on paper and how enforcement actually plays out on the ground in markets like Indonesia?
So I think it's twofold, right? It's important for countries to have the right laws on the books, but it's also important for them to understand how quickly piracy is evolving to make sure that their laws still are able to address some of the gaps, whether it's more rapid takedowns, whether it's through more strict requirements on like know your business customer within certain pieces. It's really important for us to work really closely with the regions to kind of help them see that additional data. While it might not be an issue in Indonesia today, we might have seen it in another region, and we can take that knowledge from another country and say, hey, we saw this, and pick another country, and hopefully impact, how a government like Indonesia might see piracy in the future.
Do you know Telegram apps? Most people in Indonesia use Telegram for piracy. Do you know about that too?
Yeah, I mean, pirates are equal opportunity, and they use all sorts of encrypted mobile messaging apps to propagate whatever illegal links that they have. Telegram, I think is favored because it's probably not a U.S. It's not a U.S. company, right? It exists in a different ecosystem. But I will say, in my old job, I saw this a lot where pirates, where criminals were using what they thought were safe to still have conversations. But we work with all intermediaries, such as Telegram, to provide them with proper process to show them how criminals are using their system.
Yeah.
A lot of these companies have a business interest in making sure that they are not facilitating illegal activities. And also they have a business interest in making sure that, criminals aren't, using up the bandwidth, frankly. And this is why, we work with companies such as Telegram. And then the other piece, though, is, part of identifying who the pirates are is through, in my old job, we called it undercover operations, where you would be able to go into a chat room and see who's in there. Now, mind you, we're not interested in the consumers that are doing it. We're interested in finding the guy that set up the chat room that is posting those links. And to be able to collect intelligence within those chat rooms that gives us the breadcrumbs to ultimately identify who they are. So it's a great investigative opportunity, the fact that they're using Telegram.
Interesting. Okay. My last question is, looking ahead, what gives you the most optimism and what concerns you most about the trajectory of piracy in this region over the next few years?
So I think the optimism part for me is the collaboration piece, right? So being able to work with various countries across the region to strengthen their laws or strengthen the way they implement them. I think that gives me the optimism, right? Giving them data, helping them kind of understand the broader piracy problem. The part that not necessarily worries me, but I think the part that's harder to solve is that speed. Because as you can imagine, right, the easier and more accessible technology is, the more quickly pirates are able to leverage that to quickly change the websites and quickly put up those links. And I think that's the part, like, how do you stay ahead of the threat there? How do you, leverage technology as well to help identify them? How do you leverage technology to help take them down? How do you leverage, all of those pieces? And I think that's the harder piece, but I think it's, it's a challenging piece, but it's also a fun piece to figure out.
Okay, thank you, Larissa, for the interview.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today.